Senator John Cornyn of Texas. He is with us. We got a bunch to get into with you, Senator. We appreciate the time. Let's start with this. Primary runoff against Ken Paxton in late May. President Trump has said that he is going to endorse, but has held off on endorsing. Do you expect him to endorse you? What impact do you think the president's endorsement in Texas would have?
Well, I've told the president that I thought his endorsement would be very impactful, and I would be delighted if he chooses to endorse me in the race. So far, he has not done that, and people ask me, well, what's he going to do? And my usual response is, there's only one person on the planet who knows the answer to that, and it's not me. So we are not. We're continuing to work hard toward that May 26th runoff, and if the president decides to make an endorsement, that'd be great news.
Senator Cornyn, appreciate you being with us. My understanding is, and feel free to correct any part of this because there's a lot of senators, and I can't know everything that all of you have ever thought or said. But my understanding is that you've long been, in the past, a defender of the Senate filibuster rule, so a 60-vote threshold for most legislation, but that you just recently published Why the SAVE Act Matters More Than the Filibuster. Am I right? Is that where you are now? Is that a major departure, a major change in your feeling about the filibuster? And what brought you to this? Because you're going to have some critics who say, well, this is just because you're up for re-election and you want to seem like you're going to give the base what it wants.
Well, the filibuster has stopped a lot of really bad legislation. When the Democrats were in charge, they proposed packing the Supreme Court, making Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia states, and getting 2 Democratic senators each, and permanently changing the country. So the filibuster has worked well to stop bad stuff. But we're in much different times now, and with the Trump derangement syndrome and the polarization up here in Congress, Democrats just reflexively oppose everything that Trump has proposed or that Republicans want, including paying the Transportation Security Agency agents and the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They didn't do anything wrong, but they're the people being punished now by this second shutdown of a significant part of the federal government. So I long for the day when you would have these 2 political parties who obviously have different priorities and different ideas about how to govern, but where there is still the possibility of finding some common ground and working to build consensus. I think that's good for the country when we can do that, because any short-term measures that one party or the other passes can change the next time the Congress flips. So I would call this a really kind of an evolution of my views that fit the times. I don't think it's okay for us to just tell my constituents in Texas, we can't get anything done because the Democrats won't cooperate. And we know, as the president has pointed out, that when the shoe is on the other foot, when they're in the majority, they will blow up the filibuster immediately. So I've said I'm open to the talking filibuster, which we hope to use on the Save America Act and potentially other reforms as well.
We're talking to Senator John Cornyn of Texas. He's in a runoff against Ken Paxton, Attorney General of Texas, on May 26th. We know that one of you will be running against James Tallarico, who frankly seems like a very far left-wing and radical nominee for the Democrats. Do you believe that you would beat Tallarico worse than Ken Paxton would? And is that one reason why you would argue people should vote for you in this upcoming runoff?
Yes, that's exactly right. I will be at the top of the ticket as the nominee. And in 2020, last time I ran, I won by 10 points, which means that not only will we keep the Senate seat in Republican hands, but it will help down ballot races, including these 5 new congressional seats that were drawn as a result of redistricting to hopefully help keep the majority in the House. The Attorney General has so much political baggage that I think it's an open question whether he could actually even win So thus the prospect or the possibility of actually losing a red state Senate seat in this election, and even if he were to win by the skin of his teeth, I would think he will not win by a margin that will help down ballot, and it'll cost hundreds of millions of dollars to try to salvage him and salvage this red seat. So that is part of the argument that we've been making, and I know the president and his team are fully aware of.
Okay, so let's say that you weren't the nominee. Let's say Ken Paxton won or vice versa. Would you campaign heartily for whoever the Republican nominee is, and do you expect that he would campaign for you in order to make sure that this seat, as you just laid out, doesn't end up in Democrat hands or doesn't even end up hopefully competitive, so that there's not having to be a ton of money spent on it? In other words, you win, that's great. You're going to be working hard. Do you expect his endorsement? If you lose, will you endorse him?
Well, first of all, I expect to win, but to answer your question, I've worked most of my adult life trying to build the Republican Party, both at the state level and at the national level. My first statewide election was in 1990 when we still were basically a divided state. We had a Democratic governor that year, Ann Richards, for example. But to answer your question, I would support the Republican ticket. I think that's the best answer I can give you.
Speaking to Senator Cornyn of Texas, and Senator, why would you be better? I mean, a lot of times it comes down to, for some people, trying something new. You've obviously been in the Senate for quite some time. Why would it be better to have you representing Texas than Attorney General Paxton? And how would you address any critics that you have who say that you're not as MAGA when it counts as you'd like to appear at election time? Because we get a lot of emails, a lot of callers, and this is something that we hear. Wanted to give you an opportunity to just lay it out there for everybody.
Well, thank you. I think a lot of this has to do with personalities and temperament. I spent 13 years of my life as a judge and then as Attorney General before I got to the Senate. And I always like to tell people I'm a conservative. I'm just not mad about it. But the point is what you've done. And that's one reason why in Texas in our advertising, we pointed out that I have voted with the president 99.3% of the time. That's a better number than Ted Cruz, the junior senator from Texas, by the way. And secondly, we need somebody who can be effective for the state. So when the governor called me and said, look, Texas taxpayers have had to step up and pay $11 billion to help secure the border when Biden wouldn't, he called me, and we worked with the Texas delegation to get that done. And so we are expecting a nice check from the federal government to the Texas taxpayer of $11 billion. It takes some experience and relationships to be able to get that done. And I think my effectiveness on behalf of 32 million Texans is something that separates me from the Attorney General.
We're talking to John Cornyn, senator from Texas, runoff May 26th. When you looked at the results, you won the primary in the first go-around. You had the most votes. Were you surprised by that? Did you expect it? What does that outcome tell people about Texas?
Well, I would. There's nothing's guaranteed, but I was optimistic that I would win, and that was, there have been a lot of what I call trash talk, including the Attorney General, who said he could win without a runoff. And obviously that didn't materialize. So, we've been only about 11% of registered voters voted in the Republican primary. Thankfully, people who didn't vote in the primary can vote in the runoff. But a lot of this has to do with motivating your voters and getting them to the polls. In the end, winning elections isn't all that complicated. It's about who gets the most votes. And we simply worked hard to try to encourage as many people as we can to vote in the Republican primary. So, the Democrats outvoted us, which should be a warning shot across our bow.
Senator, we got a lot of emails because we asked for questions. And, for example, I'll just let you address this. We have one VIP who wrote in and said, I believe Senator Cornyn voted against Pete Hegseth for DOD Secretary, now Secretary of War. You voted yes for Pete Hegseth, if memory serves. Am I correct on that?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Some of the questions we get are actually not fair to just to call balls and strikes here, Senator. They're not fair to your record. People seem to think for some reason that you have voted not 99% of the time with Trump.
Yeah. Well, the president knows what my record is, and he calls me a friend. And there was some indication that he was prepared to endorse me after leading in the primary on March the 3rd. Obviously, as we've said, the timing of that, and if it happens, is entirely up to him. But I think the president views me as an ally and somebody who's supported him, and I think he appreciates that. I was there on the front lines during the confirmation of 3 new Supreme Court justices. When we passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017, I was the whip who helped get that across the finish line. So a lot of the campaign is about reminding people about what my record is and, frankly, disabusing people of some of the falsehoods that are out there. So I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to address that.
Senator Cornyn, thank you for coming on the show and taking our questions, and Godspeed to you, and we'll talk to you soon.